Hello friends, how are you? Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of Washington quarter dollars, exploring the history, designs, mint marks, unusual colors, and hidden treasures that collectors are searching for. Our top three coins are the 1977D, 1978 with no mint mark, and 1979D Washington quarters. Some may look dirty, scratched, dark, or completely ordinary, but certain high-grade coins and genuine mint errors can be worth far more than face value. So before you spend that old quarter, take a closer look. You might be holding a fascinating piece of American coin history. Let's begin with coin number 1. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today, we are diving into the fascinating world of the 1977D Washington quarter, a coin that can look completely ordinary at first glance, but becomes much more interesting when you know exactly what to look for. Before we begin, there is one very important fact that every collector should understand. A normal 1977D Washington quarter is not a silver coin, and an ordinary example is not worth millions of dollars. The 1977D was made from copper-nickel clad metal, with a copper center, and the Denver Mint produced about 256.5 million examples. So if you have one in your pocket, don't immediately assume that the date and the D mint mark alone have made you rich. The real excitement comes from condition, errors, unusual varieties, and exceptional preservation. Now let's go back to the history. The Washington quarter carries one of the most recognizable portraits in American coinage. The obverse features George Washington, while the reverse traditionally carries the American eagle design. The 1977 D quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, and the small letter D beneath Washington's portrait identifies its mint of origin. This tiny letter is one of the first things collectors check, but it is only the beginning of the story. The coin measures about 24.3 millimeters and weighs about 5.67 grams. Most importantly, its composition is copper and nickel over a copper core, not the 90% silver composition used for Washington quarters, dated 1964 and earlier. And this is where many online coin videos can become confusing. You may hear someone say, 1977 quarter silver coin worth thousands or millions, but you must separate the normal coin from an extraordinary error or condition rarity. A standard 1977 D quarter does not contain the kind of silver that makes older Washington quarters valuable for bullion. If your 1977 D quarter is dirty, scratched, heavily circulated, or worn, its value is generally close to face value. Current market guides show that ordinary examples are inexpensive, while premium uncirculated pieces can bring considerably more. But now comes the part that collectors find exciting. Imagine finding a 1977 D quarter that has survived for nearly 50 years with extraordinary surfaces, sharp details, strong luster, and almost no marks. That is a completely different coin from the worn quarter sitting at the bottom of a drawer. Professional grading can become extremely important at the highest levels because tiny differences in preservation can dramatically change collector demand. PCGS identifies the 1977 D as common in most grades, but notes that examples at the very highest grades become much harder to find. So what could one actually be worth today? For an ordinary circulated 1977 D, think in terms of face value rather than a life-changing fortune. For better uncirculated examples, prices can rise into the single digits, tens of dollars, or more depending on grade and market demand. At the very top end, the numbers can become much more dramatic. PCGS records an auction result of about $460 for a 1977 D graded MS67, sold in April 2023. That is impressive compared with 25 cents, but notice something very important. It is still nowhere near millions of dollars. Some market guides currently show even higher theoretical figures for extremely high grades, but those numbers should never be treated as a guaranteed selling price. A guide estimate is not the same thing as a confirmed auction result. Actual value depends on the exact coin, professional grade, I-appeal, certification, buyer demand, and the circumstances of the sale. That is why collectors look at completed transactions rather than believing every dramatic internet price claim. Now let's talk about the condition of your coin. You mentioned a dirty or dark-colored quarter. This is extremely important because dirt, discoloration, tunning, and damage do not automatically mean rarity. A dark brown, golden, reddish, gray, or unusual-looking surface can attract attention, but color alone does not transform an ordinary quarter into a $1,000,000 coin. Sometimes environmental exposure causes discoloration. Sometimes chemicals, cleaning, heat, or other damage changes the surface. Collectors need to determine whether the appearance is natural tunning, damage, or something connected to the minting process. And please remember this warning: do not clean the coin. Scrubbing, polishing, rubbing, chemicals, or abrasive materials can permanently damage the original surface. A coin that looks ugly to you may actually have collectible surfaces underneath that you could destroy by trying to make it shiny. If you believe you have an unusual specimen, protect it in a proper holder and have it examined by a reputable coin professional or grading service. The next thing to inspect is the D mint mark. Look closely at its shape and surrounding area. Don't confuse ordinary weakness, wear, dirt, or damage with a genuine mint error. Collectors look for authentic varieties and errors such as unusual doubling, striking problems, clips, off-center strikes, or other abnormalities that occurred during production. Some 1977 error examples have appeared on the marketplace for substantially more than ordinary coins, but asking prices are not the same as confirmed auction values. The edge is another area worth examining. Because this is a clad quarter, you can sometimes see the copper-colored core between the outer layers. An unusual edge appearance may deserve further investigation, but again, damage and chemical alteration can imitate mint errors. Don't jump to a conclusion simply because your coin looks different from another quarter. So could a 1977 D Washington quarter make you a millionaire overnight? For a normal example, absolutely not. There is no credible basis for saying that an ordinary 1977 D quarter is worth millions. The real treasure hunting lesson is much more useful. Don't spend a potentially exceptional coin for face value before checking it carefully, but don't believe exaggerated million-dollar claims either. If your 1977 D quarter is heavily circulated and dirty, it may simply be a quarter. If it is exceptionally preserved, has a genuine mint error, or represents an unusual collectible variety, then its value could be substantially higher. The documented high-end example shows that extraordinary condition can turn a common-date quarter into a coin worth hundreds of dollars, but that requires an exceptional specimen and strong market demand. And that is what makes coin collecting so fascinating. The greatest discovery is not always a coin covered in gold or silver. Sometimes it is a small copper-nickel quarter that survived decades in extraordinary condition. Sometimes it is an authentic mint error hiding in plain sight. And sometimes the biggest lesson is realizing that a dramatic claim about $1 million coin is simply too good to be true. So before you throw that old 1977 D Washington quarter into a spending pile, take a closer look. Check the date, check the D mint mark, examine Washington's portrait, the lettering, the eagle, the rims, and especially the surfaces. Look for genuine mint-made abnormalities rather than scratches or damage, and above all, never clean it just because it looks dirty. The 1977 D Washington quarter is a fascinating piece of American coinage, but its real value depends on what makes your particular coin different. A normal circulated example is not a silver fortune, while a spectacularly preserved or genuinely rare error example can attract serious collector attention. So keep your eyes open, protect your coins, and remember, in the world of collecting, the smallest detail can sometimes make the biggest difference. Second coin. Welcome back to Change Your Life. Today we are looking at the second coin in our series, the 1978 Washington quarter with no mint mark, a coin that can look completely ordinary, especially when it is dirty, dark, scratched, or heavily circulated, yet can become much more interesting when you know what details to examine. But before we call any 1978 quarter a hidden fortune, there is an important truth you need to know. This is not a silver quarter. The regular 1978 Washington quarter was made from copper and nickel over a copper core, and its face value is 25 cents. So why are collectors interested in this coin? The answer begins with its history. In 1978, more than 521 million Washington quarters without a mint mark were officially recorded, making this a very common issue. The absence of a mint mark does not mean the coin was accidentally struck without one. During this period, quarters produced for the Philadelphia production stream carried no mint mark, and the same no mint mark appearance was also used for some production from West Point. PCGS explains that West Point supplemented quarter production during the late 1970s, including 1978, while the coins remained visually identifiable as no mint mark pieces. Now take a close look at the front of your coin. You should see George Washington facing left, with the date 1978 underneath. If there is no small letter beside the date, that is normal for this issue. Do not assume that the missing letter is itself an error. In fact, the no mint mark 1978 quarter is the standard way this coin was produced. The Philadelphia mintage alone was enormous, and collectors therefore do not consider an ordinary worn example rare, simply because it lacks a mint mark. And now comes the question everybody wants answered. What is a 1978 no mint mark Washington quarter worth today? If you have a normal circulated example with scratches, wear, dirt, and flattened details, it is generally worth around its 25-cent face value. Some uncirculated examples can bring a premium, but the date and lack of a mint mark by themselves do not create a fortune. This is where responsible coin collecting becomes important. A dramatic claim that every 1978 no mint mark quarter is worth thousands or millions of dollars is simply not supported by the actual market evidence. However, condition can completely change the conversation. Imagine two 1978 quarters sitting next to each other. One has spent decades in pockets, vending machines, cash registers, and drawers. Its Washington portrait is worn, the rims are damaged, and the surfaces are covered with contact marks. The other has sharp details, original mint luster, and almost no visible marks. They may have the exact same date, but collectors can value them very differently. PCGS lists an auction record of $2,875 for a 1978 no-mint mark quarter graded MS67+, sold in 2021. That is a remarkable result compared with the coin's 25-cent face value, but notice the critical detail. The value comes from an exceptional high-grade specimen, not from an ordinary dirty quarter. This is the kind of distinction that separates genuine coin collecting from exaggerated internet claims. There is another fascinating detail about these 1978 quarters. Although the coins carry no mint mark, production was not limited to Philadelphia. PCGS reports that West Point also contributed to the 1978 quarter supply, with an estimated 20.8 million quarters struck there according to historical research cited by PCGS. Because those West Point coins did not receive a distinctive mint mark, collectors cannot simply look at an ordinary coin and say, "This must be a rare West Point quarter." That hidden production history makes the series interesting, but it does not automatically make an individual coin valuable. Now let's talk about the coin's color. You may have a 1978 quarter that looks brown, golden, gray, reddish, black, or strangely discolored. You might even think the unusual color proves that it is a rare silver coin. Be careful. Color alone does not establish rarity, and discoloration can result from environmental exposure, chemicals, storage conditions, or damage. A copper-nickel-clad quarter can develop unusual appearances without becoming a rare treasure. And whatever you do, do not clean it. This is one of the biggest mistakes new collectors make. They see a dark or dirty coin and try to make it shiny with soap, polishing material, chemicals, or rubbing. That can leave permanent hairlines and surface damage. If the coin turns out to be a valuable high-grade piece, cleaning it can seriously hurt its desirability. Original surfaces are extremely important to collectors. You should also examine the edge. A normal clad quarter has a copper-colored core visible between the outer layers. Look for anything that appears genuinely unusual, but remember that damage can imitate mint errors. A damaged rim, scraped edge, or altered surface is not automatically an error created at the United States Mint. The next area to examine is the lettering and design. Look carefully around the date, Washington's portrait, the lettering, the rim, and the reverse eagle. Collectors sometimes search for genuine doubled features, striking abnormalities, clips, off-center strikes, and other mint-made errors. But a blurry photograph or a damaged letter is not enough to prove an error. A suspected error should be compared carefully with known minting characteristics, and, for a potentially valuable coin, examined by an experienced professional. So could this 1978 no-mint mark quarter make you a millionaire overnight? An ordinary example, no. There is no credible evidence that a normal 1978 no-mint mark Washington quarter is worth millions of dollars. The documented market tells a much more realistic and exciting story. Most examples are common, but an extraordinary coin in exceptional condition can bring hundreds or even thousands of dollars. The recorded $2,875 MS67+ result demonstrates just how dramatically condition can matter. Think about that for a moment. A coin originally worth just 25 cents can become a serious collectible when it survives in extraordinary condition for nearly half a century. That is the real treasure hunting opportunity. You are not looking for magic, you are looking for something genuinely different. If your 1978 quarter is dirty, don't panic and don't clean it. If it is worn, it may simply be worth face value. If it is unusually sharp and brilliant with almost no marks, it deserves a closer examination. If you see something that looks like a genuine mint error, don't spend the coin before getting a professional opinion. And if someone tells you that every 1978 no-mint mark quarter is automatically worth millions, ask them for a documented auction result proving that claim. The history of this coin makes it fascinating. More than 500 million no-mint mark 1978 quarters were produced in the Philadelphia production stream, while West Point also contributed to the late 1970's quarter supply. The coin is made of copper and nickel rather than silver, and most circulated examples remain ordinary, yet the finest surviving examples can command serious collector interest. So the next time you find a 1978 Washington quarter with no mint mark, don't immediately throw it into your spending pile. Don't assume you've discovered $1 million fortune either. Turn it over, study the surfaces, examine the details, check the edge, look for genuine errors. Most importantly, protect the coin exactly as you found it. Because in coin collecting, the biggest surprise is often not the date itself. It is the condition, the era, the history, and the tiny detail that separates an ordinary coin from an extraordinary one. Your 1978 quarter may be worth only 25 cents, or if it is an exceptional high-grade or genuinely unusual specimen, considerably more. The only way to know is to look closely, investigate carefully, and never let an unbelievable price claim replace real evidence. Tired and Fannel coin, welcome back to Change Your Life. Today we are looking at another Washington quarter that many people may have sitting in an old collection, drawer, jar, or even loose change, the 1979 D Washington quarter. At first glance, this coin may look ordinary, especially if it is dirty, dark, scratched, or heavily worn. But before you throw it away or spend it without checking, there are some fascinating details you should know. And today, I am going to explain what this coin really is, why collectors watch high-grade examples, what the D mint mark means, and what your 1979 D quarter could realistically be worth in today's market. First, let's clear up one very important misunderstanding. The regular 1979 D Washington quarter is not a silver quarter. It was produced from copper-nickel clad metal, with a pure copper center. It weighs about 5.67 grams and measures approximately 24.3 millimeters across. The Denver Mint produced 489,789,780 examples in 1979, which means ordinary circulated examples are not rare simply because they carry a D mint mark. So why should you still pay attention to one? Because coin collecting is not always about how many coins were originally produced. Sometimes the real story is about condition. Imagine two 1979 D quarters that were both struck at the Denver Mint on the same year. One spent decades moving through pockets, cash registers, vending machines, and circulation. Its surface is scratched, Washington's hair is worn, the lettering is dull, and the rims have taken hits. The second coin was protected almost immediately after leaving the mint. Its original luster remains strong, the details are sharp, and there are almost no distracting marks. To the average person, both are simply 1979 quarters. To a serious collector, they can be completely different coins. This is where the value story becomes exciting. According to NGC's current information, circulated 1979 D quarters generally remain in the range of roughly 30 cents to 85 cents, depending on condition, while pristine uncirculated examples can reach much higher levels. PCGS records an actual auction result of $1,078 for a 1979 D Washington quarter, graded MS67, sold through Great Collections in August 2014. That is an enormous jump from 25 cents, but notice the crucial detail. This was an exceptional, professionally graded coin. There is an important lesson here. You may see headlines claiming that a 1979 D quarter is worth thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions of dollars. You should never assume that an ordinary coin has that value. A documented auction result is much more meaningful than an unsupported asking price. For the 1979 D, the verified high auction result currently shown by PCGS is $1,078, not millions. Therefore, if your coin is dirty and heavily circulated, don't expect $1 million payday simply because you found the date 1979 and the letter D. Now let's talk about the history behind the coin. The Washington quarter design had already become a familiar part of American everyday life by 1979. George Washington appears on the obverse, while the reverse features the eagle design used on the quarter during this period. The design was created by sculptor John Flanagan, whose Washington portrait became one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. The small d below the portrait tells us that this particular coin came from the Denver Mint. And there is something else fascinating about 1979. The United States was producing enormous numbers of quarters for everyday commerce. Nearly 500 million 1979 D quarters were struck. That massive production explains why most examples you encounter today are common, but huge production does not mean every surviving coin is equally available in exceptional condition. As grades climb, preservation becomes increasingly important. Now take your coin and look at the surface. Don't just look at the date. Look at Washington's cheek and jaw, his hair, the fields around the portrait, the lettering, the rim, and the reverse design. Those areas can reveal whether the coin experienced heavy circulation or was carefully preserved. A coin with hundreds of scratches and contact marks is very different from one with brilliant original surfaces. And if your coin is dirty, do not clean it. This is one of the most important warnings I can give any new collector. Never use polish, abrasive materials, harsh chemicals, or aggressive rubbing to make an old coin shiny. Cleaning can permanently damage the surface and reduce collector appeal. A coin that looks unattractive to you might have original surfaces that are much more valuable left untouched. Now turn the quarter sideways and examine the edge. Because the regular 1979D is a clad coin, you should expect to see the copper-colored center between the outer layers. If something looks dramatically different, don't immediately assume that you have discovered a rare error. Environmental damage, scraping, heat, chemical exposure, or other alterations can create strange appearances. A genuine mint error must be distinguished from damage that happened after the coin left the mint. Another fascinating possibility is a clad layer error. Some 1979 Washington quarters with missing clad material have appeared at auction. Coin World, for example, records a 1979 Washington quarter described as having a missing obverse clad layer, graded MS63 by NGC, that sold for $66. This demonstrates why unusual mint-made errors can be more interesting than ordinary examples. But remember, an error must be authentic. A damaged coin is not automatically an error. So what should you do if your 1979D quarter looks unusual? Don't rush to sell it, don't clean it, don't scratch it, don't try to remove discoloration. First, protect the coin in a suitable holder and compare its characteristics with known examples. If you believe it could be an important error or an exceptionally high-grade specimen, professional authentication and grading may be worthwhile. Now let's return to the biggest question. Can this 1979D quarter make you a millionaire overnight? The honest answer is that a normal 1979D quarter cannot. There is no reliable evidence that an ordinary example is worth millions of dollars. The real opportunity is finding an exceptional coin with something genuinely special, such as extraordinary preservation or a legitimate mint error. The documented $1,078 auction result proves that a quarter can sell for far more than face value, but it also shows why we need to separate exciting possibilities from unrealistic claims. Think about the difference. A worn 1979D quarter might be worth around face value. A nice uncirculated example may bring several dollars or more. A very high-grade certified example can reach hundreds of dollars, and the finest examples can attract serious competition. NGC's current guide lists values rising dramatically at the highest grades, while PCGS records the $1,078 MS67 auction result. That is the real hidden treasure story of the 1979D Washington quarter. It isn't a silver coin secretly filled with millions of dollars. It is a common copper-nickel clad quarter with the potential for substantially greater collector value when an individual specimen is extraordinarily preserved or contains a genuine mint-made error. So the next time you find a 1979D Washington quarter, stop for a moment before spending it. Look at the date, find the D-mint mark, study the surfaces, examine the edge, check the rims and lettering, look for unusual mint-made characteristics, and if the coin is dirty, leave it exactly as it is. Don't clean away the evidence. Because sometimes the most valuable thing about an old coin isn't what you can see immediately. It is the tiny detail that everyone else overlooked. Your 1979D quarter may be an ordinary 25-cent coin, or it could be an unusually preserved or genuinely erroneous example that deserves a much closer look. The key is not believing every million-dollar story. The key is knowing what makes a coin truly rare, protecting it properly, and letting real evidence determine its value.